jump into the the short film, the quarantine film, there's something special about reading about and watching all of this Apollo 11 footage. I feel like for the last year or four, there's been just a weight on our chest of like, man, we are helpless and we can't do anything about just everything that's going on around us. And then you see these guys who are just like, hey, we have 1960s computers and we're going to use them and go to the moon. What are you going to do about it? Like, it gives me a weird, hope and even patriotism that I haven't felt in so long. Tell me about, combing through those archives when you were doing the original movie and now for this. And, what feelings did that stir up in you?
Yeah, I think everything that you just said. I think that was the byproduct of making and working on not only the feature length film but this film was just that message of hope. No matter what you go through, there's light at the end of the tunnel, and if we can all figure out a way to work together collectively, that there's going to be bigger things to come. And I certainly felt that mainly when we had Apollo 11 out and I could travel the world and go in the theaters with audiences and talk to them about it. And it wasn't just in this country, but, all over the world. I was just floored by people that would come up to me and talk about their own connection with the mission or how, and a lot of times they bring their family, their kids, other family members, friends, and they'd have this kind of communal experience, and a lot of them were repeat viewers to the theater, which was really a nice bonus for me personally, but also just to sit there and experience it with them and have them talk about how it, like you said, it made them connect in a way that they haven't been connected or felt connected before. And that's definitely something that we're all going through in the last year. And I think, like a lot of filmmakers, I wasn't, we had to postpone what we were working on, our next feature length project. So we were in the process of getting back a lot of these materials back into the public domain through the National Archives, but they were closed as well. So we were kind of in organizing, dust cleaning, housekeeping mode with all this material. And just happened to start looking at some of the quarantine procedures that were initiated following the successful splashdown after they walked on the moon. And I was really taken aback at how large a process it was. This was something that was red flagged by the National Academy of Sciences to NASA to say, hey, you guys could potentially be bringing back extraterrestrial life that could infect the entire planet and kill us all. So you might want to come up with, some sort of safeguard. So they did, and they built a lunar receiving laboratory at Johnson Space Center in Houston. The astronauts, after they came back, were, in full-on biological isolation garments. They were shoved into, a shiny Airstream mobile quarantine facility. And then, all the material that got swept up with them, the lunar material, and then also the command module itself that housed those materials. And then everybody that had the support staff that was in there with them. So all this to say, they had a plan in place. By the time, they returned, they executed it properly. And they were successful, and we all, thankfully, reaped the benefits of that. And let's not forget that they also had all the photographic evidence, the real, nice quality, high quality evidence that they were actually on the moon via the Hasselblad cameras, the 16 millimeter film negative. Of course, we had the video downlinks of them, but that looked like, kind of these ghosty black and white things, but the real high quality stuff, they put a plan in place to get that back safely. So, that's what our film highlights. But as the last year, played out, and we had not only the pandemic, but you had a racial justice movement happening over the summer. You had a ramp up to the election, which was very polarizing in this country. not to mention all over the world. You know, it really dawned on us how parallel, you know, the events in the film were. This was the backdrop of the 60s. You know, you had elections going on. You had two major assassinations in 1968, a year before Apollo 11, with Dr. Martin Luther King and Bobby Kennedy, and you know, a war that was going on at the time, the promise of civil rights. So there was a lot going on in the country back then, just like there is now. And I think to see the imagery of you know, rioters storming our Capitol, you know, our film ends in the U.S. chamber, that same chamber where that happened. And I think the message of the film is best said by, you know, an astronaut that gives a speech in that chamber. And, you know, it's one of hope and that you can endure these things. So sorry, long-winded answer to your question, but that's,
sure.
that's basically, you know, why I'm so proud of, you know, getting the film out there.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many moments in American history and world history, you know, like the Kennedy assassination, or you know, more recently 9/11, where you know, those, oh, where were you when dot dot dot, and there's so few of those that are positive and uplifting. Oh, where were you when this happened? And you know, the moon landing is one of those, and it's so interesting, you know. So many people now have had to go through their own quarantines, whether they're, you know, professional or makeshift at home. Um, you know, you mentioned going through it, so that was not like an epilogue to the film that you kind of chopped off when you did the first one. It was something that, you know, did it come about as a direct result of, you know, your own experience with quarantine?
Absolutely. Yeah, it was never in the cards. When we made the feature-length film, I knew that the film was going to end with the splashdown and just the immediate aftermath of that. So, in fact, the film in some ways was constructed backwards, because I kind of wanted to highlight any untold stories. And we had a lot of footage from that recovery operations in large format that we scanned. So I knew I wanted to end it there. There wasn't a whole lot with the quarantine actual procedure, so that was one reason not to end it there. And plus, at the time, a couple of years ago when we were making the film, it kind of looked ridiculous that they were, you know, these guys, they're heroes, you know, and they come back and then they're just like, you know, the helicopter went below the deck and they're just kind of swept into this, you know, into this Airstream trailer, and you know, they're in the window and kind of waving. It just didn't seem like a real, you know, good way to end the film. So we had some passing shots in the end credits that we highlighted in the film, but you know, cut to 2020, and in the spring, I'm based in New York, and the pandemic was raging, you know, in the spring here in March and April. And so seeing those shots juxtaposed with what they were going through, it kind of made you wonder, like, well, what did they do exactly? Like, how did they safeguard themselves? We all have to wear masks now. They had, you know, masks and all this stuff. So getting into the research of all of that and trying to piece together the chronology of how they safeguarded all these different things was really interesting. And it also was nice to work with the team again. I think we all kind of need a human connection. So to figure out a way as a filmmaker to work remotely too, where we're used to piling to rooms with, you know, my sound designer, or, you know, my colorist, or the guys that are scanning the film, and, you know, watching scenes just, you know, on a big screen in a theater time and time again. I didn't have that luxury on this one. So it was interesting to kind of learn a new language of workflow too.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for your time and for the films. They are incredible snapshots of, you know, genuine, you know, the right kind of American exceptionalism that I think we need more of today. And as for quarantine, you know, I'm New York based as well, and it would have been a lot more difficult without TV and video games. So, you know, thanks for everything that you do, and I can't wait to catch you on the next one.
Thanks, Zach. Really appreciate it.